Hi, Andrea here, and this is the exclusive video for Patreons, the narrated version actually. And this is how we made the Moxon Vise. We worked together on this project for a few days, and the Moxon Vise came out really nice. We used white oak. This is a quarter-sawn piece that was really nice for the front jaw. We used a little bit of planer, and you can see it's a Volkswagen brand planer. That's not true actually. We just put that there, fell from a tire. Using a scraper plane to make a really nice tight fit on the piece. And my brother also found these little drawings of the trees that we try to make a cut on the scroll saw and to make a little pattern to glue on the front of the wheels that actually close the vise. He did it by hand and I did it with the machine. Like he said, it wasn't fun to fit them together, but we eventually did it. Next we used the black walnut, as you see here, and the black walnut was to give the contrast to the little piece that we cut, the tree from white oak. Next, the handle. Actually the thread was made using this little threading tool that I bought from Germany, from Dictum Tools, and it works really good. Thread was made from beechwood. Since we used the 22mm system, we didn't have the Forstner bit, so we had to drill these by hand, and we used the Bryson bit here. That's the little washer that turns from the wood that you saw before, that falls. And then tapping the wood, this was took a little bit of time, but was easy enough. It's not metal, so it cuts quite easily. And then with the drill we tried the fit, and it worked great. It was tight at first, but then we had to move it a few times through the drill, and that became quite good. Next we mixed the batch with the hide glue, and you saw the setup was on 2 pieces of wood, not really safe in a wood shop, but we were there with the water, so it was quite safe. We glued it onto the piece of walnut, and then we took out the piece of packing tape that you saw before. That was so it was easier to cut on the scroll saw and keep the pieces together. And that was the design cut. We also put a little bit of bevel on the sides to make it look thinner, and that's a little bit nicer, so it looks like it's carved in the wood. We put a little chamfer on the back side so you can actually reach nicer with the fingers around and tighten the vise better. Next, on the piece that is behind the front part of the vise, that gets clamped like you see here, we cut these notches for the clamps. And then we started doing the table. It was again made from white oak, and these pieces had to be perfectly flat and 90 degrees. Then we decided to put a strip of black walnut in between to extend the table a little bit, and also to give it some contrast between the woods. After gluing it in place, we tried to plane this wood, but it was growing in all of directions and we got a big tear out. So we decided to cut a new piece and to glue it on the other side of the table where we had still a little bit of space. Anyhow, we needed to fill this up, so we cut just another piece of wood that we planed. And Morris was planing here for quite some time to get just the perfect fit. By the way, these are the millimeter thick shavings that were possible with this plane. Awesome plane, very old but very good. And you can see a lot of shavings. Then we cut the piece to its final size on the table sled, and it was time to glue it all up. We cut also some grooves in the back, so the fitting would be nicer. It doesn't bring any strength actually, but it keeps everything in line when you glue it, and that's really important. Then, because it's the Epic workshop, we decided to also put some trim inside. And this was a little bit of job, not much, but yeah, it was some work with inlay. Also black walnut inlay, and we tried to be careful to put only the hardwood inside so it shows the darker side. Little jig on the miter, so we were able to cut this really nicely and really precisely. And they went great inside after fitting and trying, and you would use the miters a few times to cut this angle so you get it really perfect. You couldn't do it from the first try, it would be really difficult. And here we applied the coat of linseed oil, the first one that absorbs into the wood. But this is just to keep it clean when we are assembling the pieces, so it doesn't get dirty. Afterwards we will apply more linseed oil, but we were careful not to apply it in the spots where we will put glue. We needed to plane the feet flush with the bottom part. Next, the assembly of the wheels and the treads. Just like this, we glue them in and they work beautifully. Then we applied a coat of linseed oil, and after that on everything was applied another coat and another one until it felt like it didn't absorb anymore, and then we applied dark wax at the end. Next, it wasn't enough, so we cut another piece of black walnut, and we needed to cut this another carved piece of tree into the front vise. So this was I did it by myself, and this was a lot of job because there were like 87 holes, which means that I needed to stop at every hole and then put the blade in and then retighten the blade and turn it back and turn it on, and this was a lot of job. I think I spent like 8 hours cutting this tree. And then we repeated with hide glue and glued it on the front vise, scraping a little bit of that linseed oil just so we get a better fit. We put a piece of laminate that it's not sticking like melamine, and then the brick on top of it. With the router and the improvised sled here, we cut the design a little bit thinner because this was easier to cut on the scroll saw, thicker, and then thin it with the router and directly in the vise. These were great, and then Morris had another 3 hours of work of carving the little details, so you can see that that this is weaved together. And it was done after some time. He sanded a little bit to soften it. And then we used a piece of leather, very thick leather, like 2 or 3 millimeter thick, I think. We applied contact adhesive and placed this only on the front vise. So from the inside of the front vise, of course, we placed this leather and not on the other side. Why? Because when you put the vise on the table to the edge, when you press, the piece that you are clamping conforms to the leather and bends only on the front vise. You don't want it to bend on the other side, to put the leather on the other side, because then it would press against the edge of the table and would probably damage itself. So this is why the leather is only on the front side, and this really helps to grip the piece you're working on, and you don't need to apply as much as pressure. With a little gouge we cut the holes that you saw there, and then we applied a little bit of wax on the edge of the leather and burnished it with the handle of a tool. And then we reapplied the wax, and this got this really nice shiny edge like you get on the belt that you wear around pants. We applied linseed oil. Here I pour linseed oil, and I pour obviously too much, so we had to dry it off with towels, but we used it again on the rest of the vise, and the vise was finished. Really beautiful to look at. Is it necessary to put this many things on the vise? No, but yeah, he likes it, so I like it too. Looks really beautiful. Most important, works really nicely. Most of the things that it will be used on is the cutting of the dovetails, or some vertical pieces that go through the vise, so in between the two threads you could clamp the piece together and hold it a little bit above the bench, so this will help you to make it more comfortable. Works really beautiful. As I said, the wheels turn very nicely, and that's the purpose of the vise, to work effortlessly. You can see it has a little bit of twist because we elongated the holes. He didn't show it in the video, but we elongated the holes a little bit so it can go sideways a little bit if the piece is crooked or something. So this is one example of holding. It really holds very nicely, but the most practical is actually the true hold, like you see here, for cutting dovetails or some joinery that it will be needed. For this example it also works, but I wouldn't really use it if it's not necessary, but yeah, it could do this job as well. So thank you very much for watching and for being my Patreons. I really appreciate that, and I wish you for a nice day. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.